Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 70 of ZK Live. Tonight we have Rick Holtz from H.J. Holtz & Son. They are a painting, wall covering, and decorative arts company based out of Virginia. I'm going to bring Rick on right away and let him tell you all about what they do rather than me. Hey, Rick.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
You too, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Happy to be here.
So for people who don't know, where are you guys and what do you do?
We're in Richmond, Virginia, which is sort of the middle of the state of Virginia. We're about 2 hours south of D.C., an hour west of Williamsburg, an hour east of Charlottesville, Virginia, where Monticello is. So we're kind of right in the middle of the state. And as you said, we're a residential paint company, do a lot of wallpaper installation, do a lot of decorative stuff, try to tackle the fine paint stuff, the luxury coatings, as you call them. And we do carpentry work too. Actually, that part of our business has grown quite a bit lately. So we do all that, and we travel. I mean, we'll travel to Charlottesville on a regular basis. So we travel anywhere from an hour to hour and a half to work on if the project's right and people want us, we'll go. Yeah.
We have a similar thing. So I'm interested to hear about how that works for you guys.
Well, it's tough, it's definitely something you need to, I don't know. I feel like I'm always on the fence about it. I don't make a full commitment. Like, the Charlottesville market is a great market for us, and it's about an hour west of here. And it's like, I just need to establish some roots and really just go for it. So.
Yeah, that's what I keep thinking is we'll just get a Boston office and a whole team up there. And
Yeah. But it's hard to do that and keep going with what you're doing, And, it's like being a business owner in general. People are always like, you should do this, you should do that. And I said, well, I don't know if I'm really good at what I'm doing now to stop doing that and go try to do something else. And I almost feel that way about, having like a satellite office. I know it's a tough thing for a lot of people. And I don't know. I guess I just haven't had the time to commit to it. There's always something, right? Like last year was COVID and it's still COVID. So we'll see. To be determined.
So how big of an operation are you running? Couple guys?
We have about all in probably about 65 employees. The bulk of what we do is interior and exterior painting. That's about 46. That's about 60% of what we do. 60 to 70% of what we do. And then wallpaper, and then a decorative team, and then a carpentry crew. So, and wallpaper is like a segment that I just feel like is just growing by leaps and bounds because there's just not a lot of people training to be wallpaper installers. And we're lucky. We feed them through the pipeline.
About that. We're going to start classes on wallpaper at ZK Finishing School.
Nice.
Because I think there is a big gap in the market. Yeah,
there definitely is in Virginia, and it may be something nationwide. My guys are members of the Wall Cover Installers Association, and they couldn't have a conference last year either, but they're well connected, and I think it's a common thing. But we, like you, are very our work is very dependent on interior designers, right? And the interior designers not only their jobs involve painting. They can involve the decorative finishes. They love wallpaper. And it's just nice to be able to sync it all together and just do it all with one contractor. And I think it's a great benefit and an advantage for us. As they don't have to call 3 or 4 people, contractors, and try to coordinate it. Now, that being said, it's still tough for us to coordinate our own services. If you got so many, you've got what? You got 3 or 4 painters to one wallpaper guy, or maybe 5 painters to one wallpaper guy. So it's hard to sync them up because the painters are always available almost, and the wallpaper guys are, 2 or 3 months out. So it's tough to try to try to take advantage of what I feel is a competitive edge for us.
Yeah. It's awesome in the sales process.
Oh yeah, it sounds great when we can do this, and then we get the job and we're like, how are we going to do this and sync everybody so that it looks really, really good? And after 26 years, this is my, what is this? This is 2000. Yeah, this is my 26th year in the business, and it's still, you still learn so much every day.
And
it's different every day.
Years in business in total, right?
Pardon?
The company's been around for a lot longer than 26 years.
Oh yeah, the company's been around for 85 years because my grandfather started the business.
That's amazing.
Yeah, my grandfather started the business, and then my dad is the son, and H.J. Holtz and Son, and then it's me. Yeah,
do you
quite
have
a legacy.
Working in the company?
Pardon?
Do you have any children working in the company?
Well, I have two sons. One's in college, and one is a junior in high school. And they both worked in the company when COVID hit. They started working in March, and they worked all the way up till school started again, virtually here. And then my other son went to college, so he left in August. So yeah, they worked pretty much from March to August because we didn't get shut down in Virginia. We were scared, but we didn't get shut down totally. And it was great for them. But I don't know. I have a daughter that's 14 too. And I think, my dad and mom kind of steered me away from the business, and I want it to be a choice that they make. But I can see the advantages of each one of them if they decided to get involved in the business. I feel like, one is very good with sales and has got that personality that would really do well. I have another that's very good with money, and I feel like that's a great advantage. And then I think with my daughter, I think having a woman in this type of business, residential, luxury finishes, working with interior designers, it's great. It's great for a female to be in the business. I think they relate well to clients. They relate well to designers, and just works well. I saw that with my sister that worked in the company. So I think it'll be great.
So how did H.J. Holtz start then? How did what started your grandfather in the painting business?
Well, my grandfather's father was actually a wallpaper guy. And so he trained his son and he trained like three of his sons to be wallpaper hangers. And so that's what my grandfather was. And I guess back in the 30s, rental apartments, because a lot of people didn't own homes, instead of putting a coat of paint on them, they put wallpaper on the walls and ceiling. And it's not wallpaper like you and I think of it. It's pretty inexpensive. And my dad and my grandfather both said it was very, very thin, but they would just cover the walls and ceilings. And then the real estate agents, so what they would do is they would go to the real estate agents who were managing all these properties, and they'd give them apartments to go hang wallpaper at. And then they started asking them, well, can you start painting? And they didn't paint. So then my grandfather said, well, maybe I need to start painting. So that's how he got into the painting too. He actually did blinds too, Venetian blinds, those old wood blinds. He used to do those too, but he stopped doing that. And that's how he actually got into painting. My grandfather never liked painting. He didn't like getting his hands dirty, like getting paint on them or dirt and grit. He loved sprayers when sprayers came out because that was, he was around when they first came out. Loved rollers, anything that would make it cleaner and faster. He was all about it. So that's how we kind of evolved.
And did he have a lot of guys early on then?
Yes. Yeah, he had a pretty big company. I mean, he'd paint anything. He'd paint somebody's house. He'd paint, like one year he painted all the mailboxes in a part of the city. Like where you go to the corner and put your mail to go out, those blue mailbox. Like he would do anything. And back then, it was hard to say how many employees he had because you could just go to a corner and pick up 5 or 6 guys. There wasn't such thing as the IRS, like checking, are you taking taxes out on this person or whatever? So it was very different back then. But when my dad took the business over from my grandfather, I think had like 20 employees, and my dad pared it down to like 5. He got rid of them. He had a much different focus. He was very focused on what he wanted to do and the type of company he wanted to run.
What was that?
He wanted to work he just wanted to do residential stuff. He wanted to work for like everybody, he wanted to work for high-end homeowners. And he wanted to build relationships, and he wanted to keep 5 or 6 guys busy year-round. And he wanted to form relationships with clients. He wanted to paint their exteriors. He wanted to make sure all the maintenance was done. And then when a designer came in to redo their interiors, he was there. And he had a steady clientele, and he kept 5 or 6 guys going busy for, most of my childhood. And that was his thing. And he wanted to be known as not the biggest, but he wanted to be known as the best. And, integrity, doing what he said he was going to do, all that sort of thing. And, people would wait for him for 6 months if they had to. And they knew that if Mr. Holtz said, you're on our list, they had nothing to worry about. As today, I'm sure you're the same way. People are calling every 2 days. When are you coming to my house? Am I on your list? I haven't got, not back then. So very different company. And that's the company that it was when I came into it.
That's amazing. So is that a personality thing? Do you think you have a different personality than your father that made you want to grow it then? Or where do you think that comes from?
I think it just came from the fact that, I was one of 5, and I have 4 older sisters, and the age spreads like 10 years. And my mother stayed at home and worked in the business, typed his estimates. I can remember hearing the typewriter going. He'd write them up, she'd type them, mail them out. And the office phone was in our house, and our regular phone would ring a certain way. And the ring sounded different when it was the business phone. And we were all, and you get the shh, everybody be quiet, Dad's going to take a call, and that's how it was. So he had a lot of mouths to feed, and he was all about security. He didn't want to take risk. And my mom wasn't about taking risk. They knew what they needed to do every year to support the family they had, and they were great with doing that. And some years were better than others, but that's what it was about. It was about security, and it was about being safe, and giving his employees security, because he kept the same 5 or 6 guys, for 20 to 30 years at most. So that's the model he had, and he had his hand on everything. He didn't paint in the field, but, he was the field supervisor. He'd have 2 jobs going. He could give the client all of his attention, and it worked really well for him.
That's interesting. I think that if you're going to draw up an awesome company to take over, new mindset and technology in the future,
yeah,
better company than a company that's been super conservative, risk averse. I'm sure he had great relationships. And did he have like SOPs and stuff written down? Was it that? Did people do that back then?
No, he didn't really have that. But it's interesting. My dad passed away this year. He died in July, and the mail and the cards that I got from clients and the things they said about him and the stories they told that I never knew, is just unbelievable. I mean, he would have painters, and he'd sit down at the kitchen table and be talking to the client while the guys were working in another room, and finding out all about these families and what made them tick. And he was really part of so many people's families, and just such a good friend. And that was it was that simple for him. It really was.
Yeah.
And he was great at it, and people trusted him inherently, and they loved him. And he was very generous too. So that was nice too.
So they talk about goodwill, when you go to buy a business, like what's the goodwill, the intangibles? Took over a company that had banked goodwill for an unbelievable amount of time.
Yeah, and having that reputation and getting involved into a company like that is a double-edged sword, right? Because people buy from you because of who you are. But then also coming in and being the new guy and taking over a business like that is, you have a high bar to live up to, and sometimes you don't even know how high that bar is. And, my first 10 years in business, I think that's what a lot of it was. Bumps and bruises, and, growing pains and where your dad did it this way, where your dad did it that way, and you learn that way. And I mean, I feel like I've learned as much from clients over the years as I did from my dad, for sure.
What was that handoff process like?
He said that he was going to let me work in the field for like 2 years, and then he was going to let me run the guys, and all he wanted to do was estimate. So he'd go get the jobs, and I was going to, divide up the guys in two crews or keep it up like it was, and then I would go from there. Well, that lasted for about a week. And then he was like, you're here. You just run these guys, and I'll tell you which jobs are ready. And that's how we did it. That was the handoff. And he was great. He let me make all the bumps and bruises and mistakes that I needed to make. He wasn't an overbearing guy that said, you don't want to do that, you can't do that. I mean, he gave me his opinion, because one of the biggest things I did is I started working with some general contractors. And he was like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And I was like, why? Well, you're never going to get paid. They're going to tie up your time. They're going to run your job for you. And, there was a lot of what he said was exactly right. But I thought of it from a marketing standpoint, before social media and all that. I'm working in these neighborhoods, but I'm seeing renovations and I'm seeing additions being built, and we weren't painting them. And I wanted to be the painter in the neighborhood. I wanted to be the painter for those clients after the builder was gone, because they're going to do an addition once every 10, 15 years, or renovation or whatever. Because you're talking 95 up until like 2008. That's when our business went from it was $380,000 in revenue the year before I got into business. And in less than 2007, we were doing 3 million. So it was like being shot out of a cannon. And I still work for general contractors, but I don't work for any of them. I work for a select few. So it was great working with him.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because you hear a lot of stories about families, and maybe I would be that way if my kids got into it. But you hear that people just don't want to let go. And I feel like when you're a business owner, so much of your business is your identity, and it is your life. I mean, we think about it 24/7. I'm sure you do. And we take it really personal. And as I've gotten older, I've tried to position it in a different place so that I'm not that way, So, but like my dad would always say, I painted that house, or I did that. And I'm like, did you really? And that's when, that transformation changed to we, as in the company. And we moved the office eventually out of his house, and we moved the shop out of my grandfather's garage. And, we rented a space, and then we bought a building, and the whole thing. And it's been awesome.
So I think we skipped over it. We talked about it previously, but you did not think you were going to go into the painting business.
No.
Out of high school, college?
Well, I mean, I grew up in a household where when we said grace before dinner, we prayed that the phone rang. It was, my dad was a worrier. He had a great business, but he was a worrier. Worried about the economy, worried about this. And that was our marketing plan. Please let the phone ring. And so when you grow up in that environment, you think, maybe I need something that's more secure. And so I went to school and got a degree in public administration. And I went to work for the Commonwealth of Virginia when I graduated from college. And I got into a grant program, and I had a full-time job with benefits for 1 year. Well, they didn't renew the grant. There was a change, and they went from a Democratic government to a Republican government, did away with the program. They kept me on, and I was what they call a P14, so I could work 32 hours a week with no benefits. So I was working 4 days a week at the state doing real estate stuff, and on Fridays I worked for my dad painting. And like I said, the shop was behind my grandfather's house, and I went one Friday afternoon, and I'd finished up, and I went by the house, and I can still see him sticking his head out the door of the side door, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'm leaving to go home. I wasn't married yet. And he said, no, what are you doing? You need to stop messing around and go into business with your dad. And I said, well, Grandpa, I don't think they sent me to college to be a painter. And he was like, you're not going to be a painter. That business can be whatever you want it to be. And you got to remember that. And I said, well, you know, there's security in this and security in that. He said, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. I said, well, it's going to take a lot to convince my mom and dad after paying for me to go to college to do this. And he said, trust me. And I talked to my dad, and my dad was like, really? Are you sure? Then we got to convince your mother. And she was the one that was tough to convince. And I mean, I'm actually very proud to say they both passed away this year, and the retirement that they got from me buying the business helped them really have a wonderful life.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that it was mutually beneficial. They gave me an opportunity with what you said, like a great business, and it helped them get a retirement that they may not have ever had. So it really was a mutually beneficial relationship, and it couldn't have been any better if we like wrote it up, sketched it out.
Yeah.
So
that's so awesome. So you came in there. Did you come in there like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this? Oh,
yeah, I remember within the first couple of weeks that my dad had a painter that worked for him named Jody. And I threatened Jody. I said, we're going to go out in this lady's front yard and we're just going to duke it out once and for all. Because I'm tired of hearing you talk crap about me because I'm the boss's son. Yeah, I was very aggressive and just a jerk, really. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Just a jerk.
But you had a vision.
I did have a vision. And my dad was very well known with other painters in Richmond. And they used to call him the utility room painter because that's where his office was in our utility room. And he loved it. He thought it was funny. And he was fine with it. But I wasn't. And that was like the fuel that fed my fire. And, you know, our Richmond chapter PDCA or PCA is very active. And there's a lot of family businesses in Richmond, commercial, residential. And I remember going to a golf tournament. And back then there was Durham Paint Company. And there was a new contractor that was about a year old. They came out to the golf tournament. They had Durham on one breast pocket and their company name on the other. And I'm sitting there going, why are they wasting all their money on those people? And they're not even in business anymore, you know? And those sorts of little things, my dad, it was like water on a duck's back. But for me, it just stoked that fire in me that just made me want to be better than them. So it's interesting, like up until 2010, I wanted to be the best. And it just so happened it made me get bigger and bigger and bigger. Then when the recession hit, and after that, then it was all about how can I be better? How can we be better? And I wasn't comparing myself to anybody else anymore. You know, it was just continual improvement. What can we do to continually make this better each year? And it's so funny because now we've been in it long enough, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but you find yourself having issues that you solved 5 years ago, and somehow you got away from those solutions. And you're like, you know, we used to do this 5 years ago. We should try that again. I bet it would work, you know, that sort of stuff. So
it was the recession. Do you think it was like maturity?
Well, no, it was a lot of things. There was the recession, and I had agreed to buy my dad out. And I signed the paperwork on December of 2008. It was like the worst time in the world. The worst time. And I was, and then I struggled from 2008 to 2011. And that's when I turned 40. And I said, you know, if I'm going to keep doing this and I'm going to do it by myself, and if I'm going to pay my dad off in 10 years, because he was 70 and he was going to be paid off. I had 10 years to pay him by the time he turned 80. That was the agreement. And I had to skip a year because of the recession. We just didn't make enough money for me to pay him. And I said, if I'm gonna do this, I need help. And that's when I first realized that I needed help. I needed an objective person that I could bounce off ideas. Somebody that gave me a little bit more business focused, more numbers focused, all that sort of thing. Because it was just going. And then it just 2008, we went from, doing 3.5 million to doing 2. So it shrunk quite a bit. And I mean, that's doing a decent amount of work in this market because Richmond's not a huge market, not like Boston or DC or something like that. So yeah, it was maturity. It was being scared, honestly. No two ways about it, just being scared. Because at the same time, I had 3 kids. Yeah, all of my kids were born by then. So yeah, I had 3 kids and all that sort of thing. And you realize I got to do something.
I was talking with someone today, and I think for entrepreneurs, I think, at least for myself, I know, like, what's made me good is having no other option. Like, I don't have a safety net. As soon as I realized in life I didn't have a safety, I grew up thinking I was going to have one, and then as soon as it was gone,
yeah,
not having a safety net, man, magically you're going to work twice as hard. Like you said, I'm afraid. I'm afraid if I don't go make this happen, I got nothing.
Yeah. And sometimes you feel like, I'm sure you feel like you're, I had a guy that worked for me, a guy that sells it. It's like trying to push over a Coke machine, but you're going to give it all the energy you can because you got to move that Coke machine, or whatever. And you're right. It is up to you to a certain extent. And then you get to a point where you realize that sometimes you're the bottleneck. And when you get to a certain size and when you grow to a certain size, you realize that you need help. One person can only drive a company to a certain level. And then if you want to have any sanity about your life, you got to start learning to kind of rely and trust other people. And that's been an exciting journey too. Because I've had people that I've relied on heavily that have come and have gone. And, at first I wasn't happy about that. And then as you see some people progress through your company and go and progress to leave, whether it be to start their own thing or to go to a different career, it's changed to being proud because I feel like I've had a hand in improving their lives. And just because they're not with me anymore or not with Holtz anymore doesn't mean that that's a negative thing by any means of the imagination. And when you can get to that point, it's liberating, and I don't know, you feel a sense of freedom and pride that if you had asked me that, 10 years ago, I would have been bitter and angry and all that sort of stuff.
Because you're still trying to prove yourself and have the safety and the security.
Yeah.
When you don't have that, it's kind of hard to be very, soft and considerate.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that's one of my biggest challenges now. Having lost both my parents this past year, they were my business partners and they were my parents. And even though they hadn't been in the business for several years, it was always one of my goals and one of my drives was to make them proud of me and make them proud of what I'd accomplished in the business that they built the foundation for, and it's like, now they're gone. And I'm like, whoa, it's like somebody taking the floor out from under your feet and now it's some self-reflection and it's, wait a minute, what's my goal going to be now? What's my drive going to be now? Because you can definitely feel a difference. I can feel a difference. So it's been, it's an interesting time right now. It's an interesting transition for me personally in the business because it was all mixed together.
So you talked about realizing that you needed help from somebody else. What did that look like, and who did you bring in, and how did you start to bring people in?
I was listening to, first of all, as we got bigger, I hired somebody to run paint to the guys. And then they ended up morphing into like a field supervisor. And that's how slowly the organizational chart kind of grew. And then I had 2 guys doing that. And they went from running paint to being field supervisors, and that didn't make sense at all. you know, as opposed to looking at people that were really qualified to help manage projects and speak on your behalf and all that sort of thing. But I don't remember if it was January or February of 2011, and PDCA had a webinar with the guy named Bill Silverman. And I listened to it, and he was talking about being able to help with your business, add structure to your business, teach you how to plan, know your numbers, all this stuff. And I said, I'll listen to it. And I did. And he offered, you know, a free 20-minute conversation if you were interested after he gave his spiel. So I signed up and I talked to Bill and we just connected. And it was one of those things where we were having a terrible year. We didn't have a lot going on. It was the winter. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I needed to hire this guy. And I needed to find the money to do it because I knew it was going to help me. And fast forward 10 years later, and we still work together. So it's been one of the best things I ever did, and it really helped teach me to add structure to my business, learn how to plan, learn how to have goals, learn to communicate that with your team, with your management team, with your painters, with the lowest, you know, the newest person in your company, and just how important that is. How important it is to everybody row in the same direction. Because when I was doing $3 million before the recession, it was controlled chaos. You know, everybody's just putting out fires and all that typical stuff that we hear all the time. So I'm a slow learner. I guess I'm still working with him, but things change so much on a yearly basis. There's always something new to tweak, something new to improve on, that sort of thing. So that was really a really important time in my career, turning point to really become educated on being a business owner.
So working with Bill, what can you kind of walk us through what that process was like, and what are some of the tangible things that came from it?
Well, one of the first things we did was like the first year, it was really dealing with the relationship between my parents and myself, and taking a company that was theirs and making it mine. You know, taking the things that they valued and that I valued, building upon those, and then adding more stuff that was important to me. And, you know, having a company of a certain size was important to me, and being able to hire people and promise them a career, like a place they could come to work and learn, but also progress and stay in the same company, give them security, all those sorts of things. Those things were important to me. And to do that, you have to be a certain size. You know, you can't be but so small. So the first year or so we worked through that, and that helped a whole lot. And then just kind of walking me through the planning process. You know, we would plan every year before I had Bill, but it's different, you know, to plan and set your goals, pick all the things that you feel are going to keep you from getting to your goals, find the most important ones, 3 or 4 of them to work on, and then work on those goals to achieve, you know, work on those action items to get your goal to your goal. It's been critical, and it's just been great. The whole planning process and having an organizational chart where everybody knows what their job value proposition is. How do I help this company make money? From me right on down to the helper I hired yesterday. They all need to understand how they help this company make money. And that's sort of the process. And we kind of follow the same rhythm every year. But the action items may change each year because we find new obstacles, you know. And, you know, when you first start a process like that, there's so many things you need to work on. It's kind of overwhelming. But as you progress, they get to be more and more focused. And it's cool. It's really cool.
That's amazing. So where did do you call it the incentive program?
Yes.
Sharing thing?
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from? And can you tell us about that? I think
the incentive program, actually, my brother-in-law works for Summit with Kevin Nolan and those guys. And I get their newsletter, and somebody sent something about a book called Ownership Thinking, a book review, and it was from Summit. And I happened to read it. And I got the book. It's called Ownership Thinking by Brad Hams, I think his name is. And I read the book, and it really was awesome. And it just kind of, it was like the next step of what we were doing with what I was doing with Bill. And I was trying to get everybody on the same page, trying to make everybody understand how the company makes money, trying to see how we can all work together to achieve goals. And so this was the next step. And one of the examples in the book was a paint contractor that, you could use it in any kind of business. So the premise is very simple. The company decides from a net profit standpoint how much profit they want to make in a year just to reinvest in capital and all that kind of stuff. And then anything over that amount goes in the incentive pool, 50%. So just to make the math easy, say our profit goal is after $100,000 in net profit, every dollar after that, 50 cents goes in the incentive pool and 50 cents goes back to the company. Because if the company's making more money, they need a little bit more money. And it's as simple as that. So when we have our yearly kickoff meeting, we talk about what our profit goal is, what our threshold is. So say it's $175,000. If we made $176,000 that year, the incentive pool would have 50 cents that I'd have to divide up between 60 people. It's as simple as that. And so what we do, say the incentive pool for last year was $200,000. We take everybody's percentage of the overall payroll. So say you're 3% of the overall payroll for H.J. Holtz & Son. You're going to get 3% of whatever that incentive pool is. And since we started this, and I think 2015 maybe was the first year we enacted this, we've paid out over $1 million.
That's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And I'm actually, first I was like, oh my gosh, we've paid out this much money. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be proud of that. We've paid out over $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
And we have. And it's awesome. And it's one of those things, people are like, why do you give all your employees all this money back? And I'm like, you don't understand. You don't understand. If I didn't have this program, we wouldn't make that profit.
Yeah.
Because I have every person, not maybe every person on every day, but every person that works in our company understands how it works, and they understand the value of what they do every day. And if they can add $1 to that net profit, then that's 50 cents that they're going to get back. And I think it just gives them ownership in what they're doing. Because when we first started talking to our employees about how the company makes money, most people don't understand it. And every year when we have a kickoff meeting, we talk about how the company makes money. You sell a job, you have expenses, your labor, gross profit, then you have fixed expenses, then you have net profit. And they see what $1 of what you sell, where it goes. And we do it every year, every single year, over and over and over, because I think we need to be reminded of it. We take monopoly money out and actually do it. And I think that's been made a huge difference with us. Because, I used to give bonuses. I mean, anybody who's been in business gives bonuses. And I hated it because I'd worry, that I was giving more to people that I liked. There's nothing objective about it, right? It's just nothing. And it's just so stressful. And I'd keep up with attendance, and I'd keep up with this and keep up with that. And I just wanted something that was very equitable and something that was simple. So even if you're not one of the highest paid people in the company, but you work a lot of overtime, you're increasing your percentage of the payroll. You're growing your percentage. And I think that's really important to have people see that. So, in this past year with COVID, we had the best year we've ever had. So it's pretty amazing.
So it keeps everybody pulling in the same direction. It's
Yeah.
not them, it's us.
Yeah, it's us. It's us. Everybody's in it except for me. I don't put myself into the pool, but everybody else does, from, my management staff all the way down to the newest person. And what we do is, if we try to do some sort of payment in July to keep people interested. Now, there's been years where we actually surpassed our profit goal before July. So there actually was real money in the incentive account. Then there's been some years where we hadn't. So we kind of estimate just to give something to just keep people motivated, because the year is a long time. And then we paid it out again in December. And that was a mistake. If I did it all over again, I would just wait and say I did it in January, because then I can close the year out. So what I found myself doing is giving a payment in July, one in December, and then reconcile it in January. Sometimes giving everybody like a $25 or $30 check, because you never know where December's going to land. But people like getting it in December because it helps at that time of year. So, and I just haven't been able to find a more equitable system. I just can't.
I'm going to be adopting it after this year. Because I think you tell me, but it's important that you have some baseline of numbers first.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
It's not, where are these numbers coming from? Do we even know we can achieve them? Are you putting a carrot out that you're not going to be able to actually fulfill?
Sure. Yeah. And, when we enacted it, we had some people that didn't believe in it, and they left. I had a couple of people leave the company because they're like, I'm not going to work hard and know that these guys over here aren't working hard, but they're going to get an incentive just like me. And I said, okay. And some of that's natural in the beginning, but what happens is, instead of resenting that person, they start helping that person, or they make the person feel uncomfortable and they leave, right? Because they just don't want to work hard. So it's nice because it unified us. And we have a problem, or we've always had a problem. Like, say we have a bet, we're working outside and it rains for a couple days, and we send an outside crew to go work with an inside crew. That never would work, because it's like not my job. And they'd be like, why are you sending these guys over here? They're not helping me. Well, when you have a program like this, what can I do to help you? And I get far less of the complaints about, don't send a crew over with me anymore. Let me just do my jobs by myself. So it's really made us more unified, honestly. I mean, you're always going to deal with some of that stuff, drama. I mean, you just are. I'm not saying that we have any kind of perfect world or whatever, but it's helped tremendously. And it's just up to us. You're a whiz at marketing. You just have to keep marketing to your people every month. If you have a company meeting like we had before COVID, now we do virtual meetings, but we give an update all the time and just try to keep it in the forefront.
It's for years now, I've been thinking about it. Whenever I first heard about you doing this, I don't know where it was, how I heard about it. It's always what I've remembered about your company, and it's always been a goal of mine, because we talked about this. Like, I want to build a company where people can make a living, and a good living, and have opportunity, and have health insurance and a 401k. And just like if you were going to go sit at a desk, if you're arguably harder work and, sometimes arguably more skilled work, how come generally painters don't make good money? Like,
right.
I think it's the business owner's fault. Most of the time it's our fault for not building an organization that can reward people well.
Well, it's that whole additive. I did a talk one time, and I think about it a lot, is, there's just not good people out there. You can't find any good help. Can you not find any good help, or are you not a good owner? I mean, life's all about balance, I think. And if you don't know your guys and your folks' names that work for you, they're never going to be good, because you have nothing invested in them. And you're going to get burned. You're going to get burned by people. That's just going to happen. And the older we get, the more we just kind of accept it and say that's sort of part of being in business. But I'm not going to change. I'm not going to stop trusting people and stop believing in people these, young people, because I've got enough experience now to see that the majority of people want to be a part of something. They want to have goals. They want to feel like they're valued, and they're going to prosper. That's all we want, I think.
Yeah.
And I hope that most everybody that works with me feels that way. I do, because I think that's important.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a key to success.
And things have to change. Like, we have a new generation of people. So we can't take a company that we grew up in and keep it the same for the next generation, right?
Right.
Because that's our workforce. And if we don't adapt, we're not going to have anybody. And
yeah,
same way, every time I hear somebody say, "Oh, I can't find any of this," you don't know what my market's like. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Well, are you changing and adapting, or are you staying the same and going, how come nobody will play with me?
Right.
And it takes getting creative and getting outside your comfort zone and adapting to the market, just like we do with our clients.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, two of the main goals we have for this year to get to the goals that we have for 2021. We're not expecting a lot of growth. We very minimal increase in revenue. Our net profit's about the same. But two of the main things that we want to really focus on is the customer experience and the employee experience. Because we all worry about the customer experience, but not many of us worry about the employee experience. And that's something that we feel we really need to work on, because I just want to make sure through all that we've been through, all this transition and all of this uncertainty in the past year with this pandemic and everything, that everybody's feeling good about where they work. And I don't think you can do that enough. So I think they're very important. They're equally important.
Yeah, and more so in this with the new generation, right? The younger generation, they've grown up, you could say, in a softer world, but a nicer world with less trauma.
Yes.
And no longer can you scream at somebody and tell them what to do every day with no context and expect them to put out great work.
Absolutely. And they want to know how they're doing, and they like numbers, and they like to know what their options are. It's really interesting, where I can remember, my dad had the same crew. Like I said, someone worked there for 20 years and they did the same thing for 20 years. This generation would not do that. They're not happy with that at all. But it's interesting too, because I feel like this generation and some of these younger people have a newfound respect for craftsmanship, having a craft. I feel like a lot of what we have with these guys that are doing wallpaper and our decorative artists and some of the painters that are dealing with fine paints, they really get into the craft. And I love the craft and seeing these young people learn something that a lot of people their age don't even know about. I mean, a lot of people that don't go to college can get into a trade school to be an electrician or an HVAC tech and make a lot of money. But they can't see, that's a great option and a great opportunity, but they can't see the beauty that they're creating like we can, which is kind of a cool thing. And I think that's very appealing to the younger generation as well.
Yeah, it's tangible.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest, like, our biology was designed not to sit in front of a desk all day.
No.
That's not generally satisfying to our humanity.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Working with hands and going, I did that. There's a sense of gratification that comes from it that, is hard to match using a computer.
Absolutely. And, we're on Instagram, but, you put out a post on Instagram and you tag some of your employees and they love it. And they love it. And they should, because they should be super proud of what they can do.
Yep.
Because there's not a lot of people that do.
And I think that it's more on our, like you said, customer service experience, client or employee experience. Well, and like you said, marketing. Like I'm marketing to my employees as much as I'm marketing to my clients.
I noticed that. And a lot of people don't do that. And, I think about some of the designers I've worked with over the years, and you think about some of their junior designers that are working on projects with you and how much heart and soul they put in it, and nowhere do you see their names,
Yep.
And not that anybody needs to be in the limelight, but it's a sense of pride, and it's a sense of purpose that just makes people want to keep doing it.
Yeah. It's the team. Like we are a team. And
yes,
how do we get buy-in so that we all go to the locker room and we go, how the heck can we get better? And
absolutely.
I get that in a lot of all the best companies run like that,
Yeah.
But in the trades businesses, it's like, if we just did what our bosses did before us, we'd be yelling and screaming at people and going, how come they're not doing what we want them to do?
Right. And we'd be dealing with new people all the time.
And we'd be saying, you can't get good people. And it's like, well, no, you have to attract them. I was doing interviews today.
I agree.
Telling this guy, my company and my vision and what we stand for, as hard as I'd sell a client.
Yeah. And I bet you were just as excited talking to him as you would be selling a $20,000 paint job.
He goes, wow, I'm excited. He said something about being excited now. And I was like, yeah, like either you are love this stuff or you're not. And I want you to know clearly what it's like to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't know. It just gives me chills because that's the stuff that's cool.
Yeah,
it is. And
on the back, run a company that has profit enough to pay people a good wage. Now that's a whole nother ballgame, right?
Absolutely. So, like our incentive program, they can make up to whatever, but they can make up consistently like 10 to 12% of their regular pay. In addition, another 12% of their pay, they're going home with $3,000-$4,000 in a year extra. So that's pretty cool.
Somebody just made a comment, and we talked about this yesterday. And I talked to a guy today who said the same thing. He said, if there were more companies out there like these, not sure I would have gone out on my own. And I think that there are a lot of guys who we're looking to have as leads. Like good companies are looking for leads. And you have a lot of these guys who end up working for themselves, making less money than if they came to work for us, and with more stress. But their bosses didn't give them a path of here's how you can grow. And here's how you feel good about what you're doing. And, I think it is on the business owners, the guys like us who I want to run a business, right? And that's what you said earlier. Like you came in to run a business.
Yeah. Well, it's different people own businesses for different reasons. And I feel like some people, they do it to maintain their own personal lifestyle. And some people, and maybe they're grouped together, but some people it's about the money, right? It's about the money they can earn because they have all the risk. And I get that. And maybe they want to retire when they're 50 or 55 or something like that. But that's not what I value. I value being able to make a difference in people's lives that I come into contact with and helping improve their lives. And it's interesting because in the end, they've improved mine. And you feel more fulfilled. You really do. And the money comes. Yeah. The money comes. Like I said, we've paid out over $1 million. And if I hadn't had this program, I bet you we would never have come close to that ever.
And to that point, then that means you also put $1 million back into the company that you weren't planning on having.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. So it's just different, but you're right. I definitely think it's an ownership mindset.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see more and more people that are like that. I think you have to be like this because for me, for H.J. Holtz and Son to find areas of improvement and to make more money, I can only do so much inside of my head. But now I have 60 some people that are all trying to help us do better. How powerful is that? You know? So.
And there's longevity in that, and there's less stress in that. And like, I hear people talk about babysitting their employees, and it makes me nauseous. Like thinking about that or saying those words out loud.
Yeah.
Like, that's not that's not a way to go about a business. Babysitting people.
Yeah, no, it's not. And but maybe those people got burned before, and it's hard. Like I said, it's so personal for some people that own businesses, and it's their identity that it's hard for them to let go. It really is. And I feel bad for those types of people because I'm almost like you. I think you'd be happier working for somebody, I really do. So it's just different people do it differently. That's for sure. But I think you and I kind of see a lot of similarities of what we value and what we want our companies to look like from a client point of view and an employee point of view.
And like I just pointed out, I think that selfishly for me, that gets me to where I want to be fastest and most sustainably, right? Like, yeah. I truly believe this is the best way for me to make a lot of money in the painting business is that everyone in my company does really well. And we all, because I don't want to work 80 hours a week. I don't want to stress about what's happening. No. I'm not there.
No.
I want good people who are all pulling in the same direction as me. So
that's right.
About you.
And if you want to back down to 4 days a week eventually, they got your back.
Yeah. I have other things going on. We have the school started. I can't tell you how many things go along. And it's like, I need people who will be there and fill in all my weaknesses.
Absolutely. Because we can't see all of it. We can't see all of it. We can't solve all of it. We can't get it all done. We just can't. We have to rely on other people. And we're constantly tweaking that, how it all fits together. I don't know if I'll ever get to the point where I'm like, we got it all straight. Here we are. We're good. That's short-sightedness. I just don't think that'll ever be. I think you have to learn to live with a certain amount of unsettledness because you're kind of like always tweaking. And that's kind of cool when you embrace it. But for a lot of people, that drives them crazy.
And those are the people where it's like, dude, you should just come work 9 to 5, make a great living. I love John Shearer always says the business owner's job is to eat problems for breakfast. And when he told me that a number of times till it sunk in. But when it sunk in, it made my life and my job so much easier to embrace the fact that all the easy decisions don't make it to me.
Right.
And all the great compliments and all the good stuff doesn't make it to me. My job is literally to deal with the problems.
Yeah.
So if I have problems every day, I'm not feeling like I'm a failure anymore.
Right.
It's my job.
And the other thing about problems, and this has been a big thing for me, is that if I'm not dealing with problems, I'm not improving.
Yeah.
Right? Because every time you have a problem, that's an area of growth. That's an opportunity to grow. And I never looked at it that way. So when I get that client that would call me and want to talk to the owner or talk to Rick, you get that queasy feeling in your stomach. I don't get that anymore. I think about this is going to be an opportunity. This is going to be an opportunity for me to learn something new. This may be a way for me to firm a relationship. Problems are necessary. Problems are good. Now, if you have the same problem over and over and over and over again, that's not good.
Yes.
But you understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that's the caveat is you can't have it over and over. But all day you continually have problems and solve them.
Yeah.
That is running a business.
Yep. Yeah. And it's great. And it's very fulfilling. And you feel like you're contributing to something. And it's a good feeling.
I also like what you said earlier, and I'm a big believer in it, and I can hear it in what you're talking about. Having a plan, right? And then putting it into place. Too often, I think I see people working really hard, and I always equate it to like taking a machete and going through the woods, but not having a map. And so circles and loops and get nowhere. Where if you were to stop for a minute, climb a tree, figure out where you're going, and then start chopping, right? And when you see that, it always hurts. You're like, that guy's working his butt off, but he's just going in circles.
He's not getting anywhere.
I think there's a lot to be said for having a plan.
Yes. And
I don't know where that comes from, whether it's, for me, I think a lot of it was studying business, reading business books and understanding markets. And, where do you think it came from for you?
Well, for me, it definitely came from working with Bill, for sure. Because, we would set goals before I worked with him, and then we would never talk about them again. And then at the end of the year, we'd be like, oh, we didn't hit our goal. Well, of course you didn't hit your goal. You weren't checking in. You weren't talking about it throughout the year. You didn't communicate it to anybody that works for you other than me, my mom and dad, and maybe an estimator that worked for me or something like that. How could we ever possibly think we were going to achieve anything? We had great ideas, but we just didn't carry it through. And I think that's one of the hard parts for business owners too, is, it's great to have those goals and it's great to have those plans, but you've got to be disciplined and consistent to constantly check in, constantly see where you are. And it's easy to get wrapped up in that machete, but you got to remember to climb that tree regularly.
Yeah.
Right. And that's hard for me. And I'm sure you've had days and weeks like that where you can go, especially in the winter when we can't work outside, our seasonality, and we're trying to keep a big crew busy. And I just get wrapped up in the day to day. And that's not a good kind of situation to get back to, because that's not our job. That's not my job. That's not your job. Our job is to coach people in the day to day and climb that tree. And I think that's a great analogy that you have. Is you're right. We need to do that.
And it's like doing the homework to know, when we get there, it will be fertile land or whatever you want to say. Like there will be a big money pot there.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can work really hard to build a business and find out, well, there's no market for what I'm doing.
And you spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think there is for me, I feel it in my body. Like there's I studied and did all this homework and read and it's like, I have this feeling of where we're going. And it's because it makes sense to me, right? Competitive advantages I've been building and refining for years where it makes sense. And so it helps me make decisions. Like Gary Vee always says, once you have the macro together, the micro becomes easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And oftentimes I will talk to people and they're so in the micro. And
well, that's because a lot of them, I bet you a lot of them were craftspeople first and they were painters first. And I see that when I promote somebody from being a crew leader to a field supervisor or something, or a project manager that's responsible for several crews. The craftsperson can look at one project at a time, but it's really hard to change that mindset from one project to multiple projects, to jobs that I finish, to jobs that I'm doing, to jobs that I need to plan for. I mean, that's a lot to deal with. And I almost think it's an advantage not to have been a painter sometimes, because it's an easier concept to grasp. But it's just like blowing their mind. It's like you're expanding someone's mind, and it's really hard, I think, to do. It takes time to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they resort back to the micro, because it's what they're used to. It's their comfort. It's, I think somebody told me when you get stressed, you go back to what your old ways. And I think that's why it's the micro versus the macro. And I find myself doing that. And I wouldn't say that I was a crafts person for a long period of time, but I go back to my old ways of just trying to push the wheel myself. We can't do that. just
It's your size of your organization, but even me, like every time I find myself, and I worked really hard to change mindsets. I always say I'm a recovering crafts person turned business person.
Yeah.
I will do everything in my power not to touch a tool or a brush or like, because it's bad precedent, and I get annoyed and angry. I'm like, I'm being so ineffective right now.
Yeah.
Occasionally, sometimes it makes sense that I go do a thing, right? I'll go touch up because it doesn't make sense to send somebody all the way there to do that touch up.
Right.
But generally, I want to not be anywhere near thinking about painting.
Yeah.
And that's been a transition, but it's been very intentional.
Yeah, there's a lot of days when I daydream about painting. I'm like, God, it sure would be nice to just work on one job all day, and see some results. Because as a business owner, we don't see results every day.
Yeah, there's a bit of a lag. Can we hear you?
Yeah, I got you now.
But there's that lag in the steering wheel, right? You like, you turn, but you don't feel the tires turn for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's fun.
It is. It's awesome. So tell me about your team. How do you find them? I know you have some guys and gals that have been with you for quite a while. What's your team look like? Recruiting. Let's talk about that.
I feel like most of the people that come to work for us know somebody that works for us. I mean, it's that simple. And that's how we've grown. And most people that work there can say, oh, I came here because he told me or she told me. And for the past several years, I mean, I've had a bounty. You get somebody in here that you think is good or going to be a good employee, and they work here for 3 months, I'm going to give you $500.
I love that.
And I've had people work 3.5 months and leave, and I paid the people $500. And I'm the one that promised that. It's just the way it is. Yeah. But honestly, that's typically how we get most of our employees, is through that. I mean, otherwise, like I said, we're a large company, and what I would say maybe is a middle market or something. So people know the name, and there's an identity, and people see us at paint stores and see us around town because, the trucks are here and there. So there is a percentage of people that just know us, but the bulk of our good employees are other people that were referred from our current employees. Because part of that goes back to the incentive program too. They're not going to recommend people that don't think like them, that don't want to do better, that don't work hard and don't work smarter. They're not going to say, hey, why don't you hire this person because they don't have anything better to do. They're going to say, hire this person because they're an awesome employee, or they're an awesome person, or they worked in the food industry and they're great with customer service and they want to learn a trade, And so we usually deal more with people that are really eager and want to be with us, which is great.
That there's so much to be said for that.
Now, there was a period of time, and I have like 5 or 6 folks that worked for me that worked for another contractor in town, and they slowly came over to us. And most of them have been with me for like over 10 years now. And I don't know how that happened, but that was just a strange dynamic, but it worked good. So
now, what is your HR look like? Do you have quarterly reviews? What's it like to be an employee in your company?
Well, I don't know. That's one of the things we need to work on, the employee experience. I would say that most of them would say that they don't get reviewed enough. And I hate it because I still feel like there's people that have to come to me to ask me to evaluate their pay. My goal would be for people to never have to ask me that I would know when it was time to give them a bump or do whatever, because I knew from a project manager, because a foreman told that person that this painter was doing better. But annually is basically what it gets down to. always had the best intentions, and I feel like that's one of the things that just we don't do well. So.
What does the painter structure look like? You have like formal designations for stuff? Is it just like come in as an apprentice, you don't know anything, put you with the guy that knows stuff and he'll teach you?
No, typically when somebody comes in, we'll get them to do brush a door and paint a door and that sort of thing. We'll do an interview and then we'll see what they do with the brush, and then we can place them. Rarely does somebody come into our company above a painter. It just never happens. It's usually as an apprentice or it's usually as a painter. And, sometimes people are only a painter for 6 months, and then we see that they do have leadership ability and we'll move them up. But that's typically the way it is. But like my production manager, he came to work for us from somebody else. He was a painter, then he was a crew leader, and now he's the production manager. One of my estimators, he came in as a helper, then a painter, then a crew leader, and now he's an estimator. I have all the guys that are decorative guys, they were all helpers before they were painters. And the same way with the wallpaper guys. Every wallpaper guy that works for me came up as a painter or a helper in the painting, and now they've progressed in their wallpaper installers. And I'm not going to lie, they're some of the best there is.
Yeah.
They're that good. And so are my decorative guys.
Yeah.
But they all understand how to paint. They understand that concept. So that's typically how somebody comes up through the company. And there's so many people in the company that are in leadership roles or in different roles than what they were when they were hired. So I really feel like they've taken advantage of the fact of learning a lot of different skills.
So what's the back side of the house, like the overhead? What are all those roles look like?
So I got two estimators, and then I do a decent amount of estimating, and I have a production manager and who has a project manager under him, and we have a project manager open right now that we're trying to fill. So, and we're looking at the structure now because the project managers ran the paint crews, and we have 15 or 16 paint crews going on at a time. But we may kind of tweak that, and they may have a paint crew and a wallpaper job, or a paint crew and a decorative job too, because we need to have a little bit better supervision so that the people that are doing the work can do the work and not do the management too. Because I think it's hard to do both.
Yeah.
So, there's like 6 or 7 of us that are on the management team.
And so you have 2 project managers and then someone that manages the project managers?
Yeah, then a production manager who's kind of in charge of all of it. But he has 2 people to help him do the painting side because that's the biggest bulk of what we do. So that's like what I said, like 65% of our revenue.
And ballpark, what are you doing in revenue this year?
Well, we were that close to 5 million last year.
Wow.
That was our goal. And so our goal this year is 5.1.
Yep.
So we missed our sales goal by like $22,000.
So,
but we exceeded our net profit goal, so that was better.
That's the one that matters.
I mean, that's all that really matters, Yeah.
So your project managers are responsible for $2.5 million a piece, and ish.
Probably closer to 2.
2,
I'd say, yeah.
And then sales guys and gals, what's a sales guy responsible for?
Like in dollars?
Yeah.
One of them sold almost 1.7, I think, last year, and then the other one, who's newer, sold almost 800,000 to 900,000. And then I can't remember how much you could say I sold, but then there's this gap of what we just get, and it's not really under anybody. It's, hey, when can you come do my house? So, and we never had a good software program to kind of keep track of all that. Last year we started using Estimate Rocket, which I like a lot. And so last year was the first year we really started looking at those numbers better.
And sorry.
Oh, did I lose you?
No, I just had a brain.
Oh,
I lost where I was going.
that's all right.
All right. Well, let's talk about painting then. Let's talk about
Okay.
fine paints of Europe.
Oh my Lord. Yeah. See, I got one of those.
I know you do. You're one of the master certified painters. How did that happen? Tell us how that started.
I did a job, I don't know how long ago it was, for a lady whose son lived up in New England, and she made me use that paint. And it was the Schroeder brand back then. I don't know if you've ever heard of, like, when they had that.
Yeah.
And so we used it and loved it, and I thought it was the coolest thing to use something that nobody else had. And then we would order directly. And then we had the opportunity that John and his dad, John Sr., came down and started a partnership with a local retailer. And once that retailer had the product in the in Richmond, it just kind of grew from there. And they're just great people.
Yeah.
They're great people. I love the product. I wish our market was big enough where we could utilize more of the products, but
I think we have the same.
We're getting there.
I love that it's different, right? As far from a business standpoint, it's nice to not be a commodity. Every day to not be a commodity and to win jobs as the highest price. And fine paints has been the lead domino to differentiation that way.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of people in our market, now that you can go get it, in Richmond, just go down to the place where they have it at the store. People are getting in there realizing that it takes skill. It takes a learning curve. And you got to be willing from a business standpoint to invest the time and the money to get through that.
Yeah.
And even though we have a lot of experience with it, and we've used it for many years, every job is different. And you've got to be committed to that. But for us to differentiate ourselves, it's something that I'll always use. And I love John, and I love what the paint stands for. I love the community. I love all of it. And as long as I'm in business, we will always use some of it. Always. We'll always be a supporter.
Yeah. It's an amazing tribe to be part of.
It is. And I was dealing with a job today that we were having an issue on. We painted a library, and it's beautiful, but the tops of the cabinets just have grit in them. Everything keeps settling in them, and we just can't get it out. All the vertical surfaces are great, but the horizontal surfaces are awful. We just can't get this airborne stuff out of there. And it's nice to be able to pick up a phone and you could call 5 or 6 different people that have had that same problem, and they can remind you of things that you knew, but you just forgot, or, because we're all in it together. And I love it. I mean, it's like an extension of your company.
Feel free to call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys have a solution figured out?
I talked about it for a while with Rich. Rich that works with John, and he gave me some ideas, and getting out the old kiddie pool tomorrow to see if that helps.
Call me tomorrow.
Okay.
We've got a process down where on those horizontals, we just did a job. I mean, to say there's a speck of dust in the horizontal would be a lie. Like, it's unreal.
Really?
We spent a lot of time working on controlling air.
And you've probably lost a lot of money on certain jobs learning that process, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but you've invested. You were willing to invest, and that says a lot about you as an owner. Whereas I feel like a lot of companies use it once, have a problem, and they're done. They want the easy. They want the tried and true.
I've gone down a rabbit hole. I mean, we've spent it's safe to say close to 6 figures now in trial and error, in sacrificing to get a job, to get in a portfolio, to get the experience. to where now, we can go out to the field and feel pretty darn good about our process and what we're going to do.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you're doing it every day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, so we're doing it sporadically, 1 job, 2 jobs a month, something like that. So it's not consistent enough in our market where you can kind of do that.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes you take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back because we're not able to do it every day.
Yeah. There's a huge, huge payoff to doing it all day, every day, and having a crew that just does it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of efficiencies there, but I have some ideas we could talk about.
That's awesome. Yeah. Anything you could do to help would help.
Yeah.
Help get me out of that rabbit hole.
And to be fair, we just finished a project where we had a dust issue, and it was a new lesson learned. We learned a new thing.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, you work with this product in your shop, and you know what you're getting every time because you have a booth or you have the airs going a certain way. But every time you go to a different residence, it's a different situation. It is. So.
And in my shop, I have a state-of-the-art booth with positive air pressure. So it leaks clean air.
Right.
You can't have your booth on site leaking air into the house. Right? It has to be negative. And so the house is leaking into your booth. And therein lies the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
But that's what we started a painting school.
I know. I'd love to send somebody up.
We'd love to have them. Next class is March, first weekend in March.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
And do them once a month, first weekend of every month. And, a quarter of the class is spent on dust control, controlling air, understanding how air moves and how air movers and air scrubbers are different and when and where to use them and all the things. It's, they don't teach it to you when you go work for a painter growing up.
No, you're like a mad scientist here. I love it.
I mean, if you aren't with this paint, you'll pay.
Yes, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Or you always say like I do, we'll make it up on the next job. Somehow we'll make it up on the next job.
At some point, I couldn't keep saying that with this fine paint stuff. We had to get better.
Yeah.
Because we just did so many. But now, we do, the shop, we got doors to a science.
I know. I love watching your videos.
Finally. Because I resprayed till I got that makeup air unit. It was safe to say we were going to respray at least one extra coat on every door. And, that's $1,000 just about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure it is.
And now we have it down where, I don't think we've resprayed a door since the makeup air unit came in, which it's paying for the unit.
Yeah, I was going to say, no matter what that thing costs, that it's saving you money. And that's the thing as a business owner. We think of things like my coaching, as a big expense, but it's not. It's an investment.
All day.
Yeah. So it's all in how you look at things.
Mentality, where you paradigms and where you see things. Oh.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
It separates a lot of us, for sure.
And the beauty of being human is we can change them.
Yeah.
We're not stuck being us. When I struggle when I hear people say, well, I'm just this type of thing. What? It's like, no, man, are you human? You can change.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful thing. So wall covering, you guys were always just doing wallpaper. Did it just kind of always consistently stay there, or?
No, my dad had a guy that worked for him that did it, and he went out on his own. And there was a big period of time where we subbed all of our wallpaper to him. We had no installer. And then he wanted to train somebody, and we had a young person that worked for us that wanted to learn. And so he taught him, and then he taught a couple more people. And then that just kind of spurred it on. And now we have James, Shane, Dannon. We have 4 installers. And then we have one guy that just came on in January from the paint side of things to learn. So we'll have 5. And they hang wallpaper every day. Residential wallpaper, not commercial wallpaper. We work in houses installing wallpaper every day.
I think that's amazing. So how'd the first guy come on?
The guy that used to work with my dad, my grandfather and my dad taught this one man how to hang wallpaper, and he was just gifted. He was artistic. He was gifted with it, and he just like took the basics that my dad and grandfather taught him, and he just took it to a whole nother level. And then he trained a guy that I had hired when I came in, and trained him, and he was just that kind of guy too, and took it to another level. And then they just kind of trained a couple more people, and it's just blown up from there.
And so once you are known in your market as someone that does wallpaper, all of a sudden it just comes flooding in?
Yes. The designers know.
Yeah.
The designers know. And, like you've heard of Gracie's.
Yeah.
Gracie's, DeGournay's, Stark, all these papers, you could be hanging a dining room that somebody paid $25,000 to $30,000 for the paper, and we're hanging them.
Yeah.
And you can't get anything on the face of them and all that sort of stuff. So, we can hang those one day to just whatever the next. And most of the wallpaper we hang is through designers. Most all of it is through designers. And, we love it.
So do you have to charge a markup to like cover for mistake? Like does one estimate the difference to hang a $30,000 worth of product versus $1,000 worth of product? What does that look like?
I mean, it'd be the same as painting a room with regular paint versus fine paints. It's kind of like that.
You don't have like a tax on like, well, if I damage one of these, it's going to cost me so much. I need to cover a lot.
Yeah, we usually, for those hand painted stuffs, we're going to charge them by the panel, whereas hanging other normal paper, we'll hang it by the roll. But I don't even do that anymore because paper's so different. All papers are so different. It's hard to do it by the roll. I mean, I want to see, before I give somebody a price, I want to see what the paper exactly is. We want to see the space, because hanging 4 rolls of a paper in one room can be very different than hanging 4 rolls of paper in another room. And sometimes the paper comes in, you got to hand trim the sides versus you can just unwrap it, start cutting it up, and put it on the wall. So there's a lot of different nuances to wallpaper. And honestly, I never learned half of it until like the last 2 or 3 years. I really decided I wanted to crack the wallpaper code and be able to tell people how much they needed to order and all that sort of stuff. And it's fascinating, and it's really just an interesting part of our business.
Yeah, it's interested me, and I was talking with a guy today who's going to come out and teach a class at ZKFS, and I was kind of going over like, because we're getting pretty good at teaching, and it's like, okay, well, what are the core things someone needs to go home after 2 days of being here and actually know?
Right.
Do entry-level wallpaper, and he was telling me the same thing. Every roll is different. And
yeah, it is. It is, and every manufacturer is different. And the challenging part with wallpaper is it's coming from everywhere these days, everywhere. It can come from Europe. It can come from here. It can come from a big wallpaper company. It can come from a person who is an artist and decided to put some of their artwork on wallpaper. It's just always something different. And designers love it because it can really give them a unique look like that. So, because everybody's like, yeah, I'll tell them that we're hanging wallpaper all the time. They're like, is wallpaper coming back? People hang wallpaper? And I'm like, yes.
It's coming.
Yes. Crazy. It's never going away.
Yeah. Do you ever hang the high gloss looking wallpaper?
No, I've wanted to. Philip Jeffries makes one, and I've been dying to hang it because I want to see how it seems, to see if it would really give the wall a gloss look or if you'd see every seam. And I need to see if I can reach out to somebody to see if they would send me at least a couple rolls so I could try it. But I'd love to see, like on a dining room ceiling or something, how it would work.
I saw a designer we work with did it in a bathroom. So there, you don't really see the seams. Wayne's,
yeah, because it was small.
It was just top half and it was like this rose-ish color high gloss.
Hmm.
And it didn't have the depth or the insane aesthetics of an oil. But, you know, it was high gloss. And it was
and it was high gloss in a day, right?
Yeah. It was a fraction of the cost.
No negative air machines, no plastic, no sanding, no skimming, no nothing.
So
yeah.
I saw it. I was like, oh, man, these guys are going to crush the market. But then when you start to think of like, yeah, where are the seams at? Well, in this bathroom, there was the vanities and the mirrors and all the things where you could break it up.
Yeah. Yeah, which made it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometime I want you to show me these metal finishes you do. I'm intrigued by that. I've never seen anything like that.
That will blow up your market. We're just talking with them. I think we've made the deal. We're going to start teaching the classes for Vero Metal.
Okay.
Man, when you show your designers, I had a designer today. She wants to do a concrete chimney on an exterior, 37-foot tall concrete chimney. We're going to do in bronze, I think. And then on that same project, we're going to do a backsplash, and we're going to do an entry door and side lights.
Wow.
And real metal.
That's wild.
Nothing like it. We're doing a whole set of cabinets right now in a custom blend of brass and nickel. It's 65% brass, 35% nickel. That was the amount of yellow that the client wanted. We did about 5 samples.
Wow.
To get the yellowness away from brass, we added nickel silver to a certain point.
Now, see, how do you have time to know all these details of a project and run the company?
Well, I had to go back and forth with the designer 17 times making these samples and delivering them.
Yeah.
So I know the percentage on that one. I don't know the sanding schedule precisely, but let's just say I thought we were going to do okay on this one. We'll know what to charge for the next one.
Right.
We're like 4 hours of sanding per cabinet door.
Wow.
After applying the product.
Oh
so
my God.
Prepping to get there, and we're about a 4-hour polish time per door.
Wow. That's incredible. Okay.
But, you know, wait till you see these doors.
I'll get you to help me with my fine paints problem before I dive into that.
Stunning, though. And I'm looking at a project now. They got a price for $280,000 for these 3 islands to be cast in bronze. And I'm like, dude, I can do really well and do this job for $45,000 and give you real bronze still.
Yeah. And
now your cabinet installer is not going to deal with 60-pound doors because we're taking MDF and coating them. And so I'm seeing more and more of a metal finish being spec'd, and the designers are wanting more metal, and we can give them, you know, the sky's the limit.
That's pretty cool. Well, maybe it'll get down here in the South in the next 2 years. Maybe I give it 2 or 3. We're a little slow.
I got the email from we've been working on a project in DC. The first samples were made like 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And they just got back to us. We finally have a PO for this job. We got 8 months ago. We probably won't do it for another year. Who knows? And they just completely changed the whole aesthetic. They went from pink with the blue dye. Now they want brown bronze.
Wow.
You know, but we can give them a troweled metal finish. Like, what the heck? You know, designers are going nuts. When you first tell them, they're kind of just like, it doesn't quite register.
Mm-hmm.
Metal on anything. They're like, well, that's too much. Then you start to show them samples and talk to them and walk them through, and they're like, well, what about over here? And like, yep. Next thing you know, you get one designer, and it's all the time.
That's so cool. What a cool niche.
It's fun. And like we said, you know, it's good to be in a niche.
It is. And it gives your employees an opportunity to learn skills and working with something that nobody else does.
Yeah.
And that's got to make them feel great.
They love it. And
absolutely.
Then, you know, we can earn more.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. It's
super cool.
Really fun. Tell me about Kirby Perkins. What was it like working with my friends at Kirby Perkins?
I loved it. So he reached out to me because of fine paints. And then I followed up with him, and he was like, well, we're doing this job down in Virginia, and I'd love to talk to you, but we're not at the painting stage yet. And I think we talked to each other the first time in like 2000, I don't know, 2017. And we kept in touch with each other over like a year and a half before we ever started working together. And then we started helping them do the painting of this place called Carter's Grove, which is an old historical plantation in Virginia. And one of their clients they've done a lot of work with up in Rhode Island bought it and wanted to restore it totally. And he loved what Kirby Perkins did, so he sent him down here to Virginia. And we worked with them as a subcontractor, and it was just awesome. I think we probably worked with them for almost 3 years, off and on. And, Tim's like the greatest, and his buddy, the guy that works under him, Mike, they're just the best guys. And, I love seeing their ways of doing things and just kind of absorbing some of that, because it's just great to be able to learn from other people and not be in a competitive environment. There was a couple times where I was like, hey, if you're going to make stain to start staining this stuff, I'll send 2 guys down. You don't even have to pay them. I just want them to be here so they can watch you.
Well, he soaked walnut shells in alcohol or something?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we did this lime paint that we had never done on the walls. I mean, we've done like lime washes outside and on brick and everything, but this is lime paint. Can't remember the name of it. But, I mean, he taught my guys how to do it. And, I mean, where was I going to get that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just so giving, so just great people to work with. Sorry that it was over.
Yeah. And I think, like, to the point of both just the last job I just talked about and this, like, we talk about, Gary Vee talks about it a lot, but patience in business is such an important thing to have, right? And I'm always trying to plant seeds all the time and water them and not worry about what's going to happen, because time is always on my side that way.
Yeah. Well,
So
I laugh because that was one of my dad's things. He was like, Rick, you don't need to make money on every job. You're planting seeds. You're planting seeds that you're going to reap the benefit on when I'm gone. You just trust me. And he was exactly right. So it's amazing that you have that wisdom as well. Yeah. He had to stamp it in my head. But that's awesome. Yeah. You're right.
And when you do that, I always say, like, and especially for people who are struggling, I struggled with depression for a long time when I first started my company. And, like, not every day are you rip-raring to go.
No.
Every opportunity. But the days when you are, please plant a seed anytime you possibly can. It might not be all the time.
Right.
We're in our defense zone. But any day that we can, plant that seed. And next thing you know, you're going to look up and you're going to be in a forest.
That's right.
But you're going to keep planting, because you're not going to stop to enjoy it, because eventually the forest will be gone. And it's such a balance of running a business is like planting seeds and, harvesting a little bit of crop and back and forth all the time. And where do I put my time?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you plant it in the wrong place, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Yep. That's okay too.
But and at a year and a half, so you fielded a phone call from a crazy guy from Rhode Island. And I'm sure it was.
Yeah, and then we had no contact for months and months and months. And then there was an article in our local paper about them restoring this mansion. And I was like, you know what? I haven't heard from him in a while. I'm going to call him. And so I called him, and he was like, we're almost ready. And I was like, I wonder if this is ever going to happen. And it did. And it did. And it was just one of those things, just persistence.
I love that too. I'm reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People again.
That's funny. So am I.
No,
I have it on my
fun is be proactive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I love that. I can't tell you how many times I've found success in life. It's always been later, now that I'm proud of what I'm doing and I can look people in the eye, and I want to follow up to help them. They should do it, right? But that ability to continually follow up until someone says, no, stop calling me.
Yeah. Well, I used to feel bad. Like, I didn't want to bother people. I'd give them a price and then I didn't want to bother them. And then a guy that was an estimator for me at the time, he had some folks come over and give him prices on carpeting. He had like 3 or 4 folks give him a price on carpeting, and only one of them followed up with him. And he was like, I guess the others didn't really care about my business. And then I was like, oh, crap. My eyes got like this big. And I was like, I didn't want to bother people from my point of view, but from their point of view, they probably thought I didn't give a crap about their jobs. And then that was one of those aha moments for me. And now it's a whole different ballgame. You're probably like me. If you want to get on my schedule, I just want to make sure,
But we're super busy. And to me, it is annoying, right? Personally.
Yes.
Call up like that. Leave me alone. But not everybody has a daily life like us with 1,700 calls a day.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't need, that doesn't make me feel special calling me twice.
Right.
But some people it does. And
absolutely. And you got to respect that.
yes. And it's I have such a hard time not seeing the world as a bunch of memes,
Well, for me, it's the analogy of the coin. I'm always looking at the heads, and I forget that you got to turn it over and there's another side to it, right? It's still that coin, but we only tend to look at one side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm always like, flip it over, Rick, flip it over.
So you get a crazy phone call, a year and a half goes by, but starts with you've got the reputation, you have the team in place, you have a relationship with Fine Paints of Europe that you've cultivated by being legit that got you the phone call in the first place.
Yep.
Can you roughly tell me what you guys did in revenue just with that one project?
I don't know. Over $500,000? Maybe. I don't know. I need to go look it up. I know my sister the other day does the billing. I think she said something about like 300,000 maybe just last year. So it's probably more than that.
Yeah. And this is what I think people don't realize in business.
And that was a note that you can't lose. That was no loss with that. I mean, that's just like send the bill and they pay the amount.
Was it all T&M?
Yes.
Yeah. So world-class work, awesome cool stuff, T&M, and over $500,000 worth of work, right? A holy grail job. And so as the small guys who are watching right now going, how the heck? How does that guy get that, right? I know what I think got you that, but what's the advice for small guys who want to get to the point where they get projects like that?
Well, you got to take risk, right? If I had used Fine Paints of Europe one time and I didn't make money on it, and I said, the hell with this product, I never would have been certified. I never would have been on their website. They never would have saw my name. They never would have seen that I was like the only one anywhere near them in Virginia. So you got to be willing to plant seeds. Like you said, some of them are going to grow. Some of them are not. And you never know which ones. But trust your gut, because sometimes you can feel it, and you just kind of say, no, I'm not going to do it. If you feel it, try to trust yourself and go for it. Business is full of taking a lot of risk. And we can help make those risks not so scary. And I think like a Fine Paints thing, and I guess part of it is the makeup. Like I'm a determined person. So like if something fails, I want to try it again. So that helps too. And I mean, I think you're that way for sure.
Yeah.
And that's really what got me to the point of being exposed to them, and just be real. Be real with people. And I told him, I was like, I'd love to work with you guys. And I was honest. And I said, I'll whatever, just try us. Just try us for a week. If it doesn't work out, no foul, no harm. Doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing.
And I think too often, especially I really think the younger generation doesn't get how, they say, so there's some saying about luck is when opportunity and preparedness meet or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too often, I know I was guilty of it when I was younger and idealistic and whatever, but like, haven't done, there's the best opportunities in my experience when they come to you. You either have done the work to take advantage of them already, or you haven't. Like, you can't all of a sudden gear up to take advantage of great opportunity.
Right.
You have to have already laid the groundwork, right? You already
Right.
had a reputation, a team. You know, you had done the work and stayed in business long enough.
Right.
Is a huge piece to this, that you could then reap the benefits and get, if you want to call that job getting lucky, which in business, like, you might call it that, but it's because you had done a bunch of work where he could have called you, and if you hadn't done a bunch of stuff, there was nothing you could have done to have earned that project.
No, you're right. You're exactly right.
And I think often people just think like, oh, when I get that phone call, that magic phone call will happen, and then I will get geared up.
No, you got to be ready. You got to be ready. You know, I mean, my son plays college football. He's a walk-on. He's a freshman, and you know he gets frustrated. And I said, Cole, you're one play away from being in the game, especially in the COVID world, right? Somebody could come down with COVID, and next thing you know, you're in the game. And business is the same way. Is basically what you're saying. You know, you got to be ready. So.
And you can't get called up and then all of a sudden go hit the weights.
No, you can't. No.
It's too late.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have been called up anyway.
And I think that is something I'm very interested in sharing, because I didn't understand that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand how important it was to do the lifting in the weight room when no one's watching, because that's the only way you're going to take advantage of it when you do get your shot.
Absolutely.
And I think it's true for business.
Yep, absolutely. It is. It's exactly this. There's so many analogies between business and teams and sport and all that. It's, yeah, for sure. You got to be ready.
And dude, you guys crushed it down there.
We did. And like I said, I can't say enough nice things about those folks. And that project's still not over, because now we'll do all the maintenance. So March 15th, I go down there, I'll walk around all these buildings, whatever needs to be done, we'll do.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And as long as we continue to do what we say we were going to do, and, you know, it'll always be. So can't take it for granted.
What's that?
Can't take it for granted.
No, because there's some young guy who's pumping iron waiting to come take your spot.
Absolutely. Every day.
Yep.
Every day.
Dude, this has been amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So
I've enjoyed it.
That I ask everybody at the end. And the last one's the really scary one. So we'll be nice, and then we ask you the painful one at the end.
Okay.
So I need a DIY tip for someone out there who's painting. I know you don't paint a lot, but this question started at the very beginning. And actually, how about a DIY wallpaper tip? If I want to do my own wallpaper tomorrow, you got anything for me?
If you're going to do your own wallpaper tomorrow, I would say get a laser level. You ever seen one of those where you set it in the back and start, like if you want to do an accent wall, you find the middle of the wall and you lay that laser level. That's like one of the best things that I'd ever heard, because when they didn't used to hang with laser levels, it was a whole different ballgame. And the other thing I'm going to recommend, it because it can be frustrating, is these peel and stick wallpapers. They can be aggravating, as worse than regular wallpaper.
Really?
They make it sound so easy. Well, peel and stick where you're not, you know, like a fathead or something is one thing, but how many walls and rooms are perfectly square? But those peel and sticks are printed perfectly square. And my wallpaper guys, as good as they are, have had more trouble with peel and stick than they have the most expensive wallpaper you've ever seen. You know, because there's no inside corners are perfectly straight. And that stuff has no give. You know. Wow. And then my other DIY for wallpaper is hire a professional.
Yeah, that's what everybody always ends up saying.
Yeah. I'm trying to. I was trying to think of a good DIY paint one though. I don't know. Yeah, that's a tough one.
All right. I need your favorite piece of paint and wallpaper. Well, you don't. Let's talk about painting paraphernalia. Either way, your favorite tool or software program or anything that has to do with your business. What is like the one thing that you couldn't live without?
That I couldn't live without right now.
Well, you could do two. Let's do a now as a business owner and then as like a craftsman.
Well, now I love Estimate Rocket. I love that program. We've gotten tablets for a lot of our crew leaders, and it's just so nice to put a job on their dashboard and they can call it up on their tablet. They know the person's name. There's all the notes with the colors. They know the communications. And because that's one of the biggest things our guys and ladies say is that they need more details, more communication, more details. And I love having it in a central place as opposed to relying on word of mouth between, two people. And that's wonderful. Not that I want to just have people looking at computers all the time, but it's great for these people out in the field to have information. It's empowering.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Awesome. All right. Now this is the best one. You have clearly demonstrated that you are an expert. You are great at running a business. So now I need you to humble yourself and give me the biggest horror story you have, most embarrassing moment, most expensive mistake you've ever made in business, whatever it is. Let's share. I painted the wrong house one time.
All right. Well, this wasn't the most expensive, but this was probably the most embarrassing ever. So back when, I don't know, I guess it was still one of my dad's original guys. So I probably hadn't been in business more than 5 or 6 years. And we would burn paint. We would strip paint with torches. And we had a permit from the city of Richmond to be able to do this. And they were stripping some paint off of some columns on some people's front porch. No big deal. The guy that did it had been doing it for years. And I had gotten home, and all of a sudden it was like, I don't know, say I got home at like 4:30, at like 5 o'clock, I got a phone call. And it was from the client. You need to get down here right away. You've burned my whole front porch. And so I drove down to where this job was. I turned the corner. There were fire trucks everywhere. There were people everywhere. Literally, the front porch caught on fire. My guys left for the day, but there must have been something dry up in the ceiling, and the embers got in there, and literally we burned the porch off of the front of their house. Thank God it didn't get in their house, but we burned the porch off, and I had to pay, forgot how much, like $12,000 to rebuild this porch from a house that had, was built in like 1910. It was like a row house. And luckily it didn't get to the neighbor's house because, these houses share walls. And I've never been as embarrassed as I was when I walked up on that scene and the homeowner just like screaming at me. And all these people in the neighborhood are all watching with like, how people are when something like that happens. But that was probably one of the most embarrassing moments and most worst moments ever. I felt like, you're the painter that burned these people's house down. So,
you ever burn paint off a house again?
After that? No.
Wow. Well, Rick, this has been tremendous.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it too.
I think, this was great. We should talk again soon, man.
Yeah, well, I am. I'm going to call you tomorrow.
Call me tomorrow.
I'll definitely do that. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It was an honor to be on your program.